She died, met Jesus, and came back with this urgent message. There are moments in life when heaven breaks into time, when the ordinary shatters, and eternity reveals itself in a way that leaves no room for doubt. Such was the experience of a woman who crossed the threshold of death, left behind the frail garment of flesh, and entered into a realm where the veil was torn away. She stood in the presence of Jesus not as a concept, not as a doctrine, but as living reality. She touched eternity, and then, by divine mercy, was sent back with a message burning in her spirit, a message urgent for all who still walk this earth. For what she saw was not only for her, it was for you, for me, for every soul who has forgotten the power, the love, and the nearness of Christ. Death could not silence her, because the message she carried was greater than her own life. It is a call to awaken, to live as though heaven is not distant, but here within now. Death is not the end, but a doorway. The world trembles at the sound of death because it appears as an end, a final curtain drawn across the stage of life. Yet what many call an ending is but the opening of another chapter, a chapter written in eternity, not in time. Death is not the extinguishing of life, but a transition, a passing from one state of consciousness into another, much like stepping out of one room and entering another. To the physical eyes, the body grows still, the breath ceases, and the heart no longer beats, but to the awakened soul, life continues unbroken, uninterrupted, and fully alive in a dimension more real than anything ever touched here. The woman who died and met Jesus discovered this truth in the most profound way. As she slipped from her body, she did not feel loss, but release. She was not diminished, but expanded. What once seemed heavy, her struggles, her fears, her worries, fell away like chains breaking. She found herself freer than she had ever been, and she realized with awe that she was not ending, she was entering. She testified that the moment she crossed over, she felt herself drawn into a realm where everything radiated light and clarity. There was no confusion, no darkness, no time as we know it. It was as if every truth she had ever heard whispered in sermons or read in Scripture suddenly breathed in her, not as words but as reality. She saw that the body we inhabit on earth is but a vessel, a garment of clay designed for time and space, but the true self, the spirit, the eternal essence, is not bound by flesh. She realized that she had not gone anywhere far. She had simply awakened to a dimension that had always been near but hidden from human eyes. It was not death that had greeted her, it was life in its fullness. In that moment, fear lost its voice, for what is there to fear when you cannot die? Death, which men dread, was revealed to her as a doorway. It was not an enemy but a servant of life, ushering her into greater realms of awareness. And there stood Jesus not as a figure of distant history, but as living presence, radiant, overwhelming, yet tender with love. His gaze penetrated her being, not to condemn, but to reveal that she had never been separated from him. She realized that he had been the breath in her lungs all along, the heartbeat in her chest, the whisper in her thoughts. Death did not bring her to him. He had been with her in life, and now she could see it without the veil. This is the mystery the world forgets, that life does not begin at birth, nor does it end at death. Life is eternal, and death is but a shift of focus. Imagine standing before a mirror. You see your reflection as long as you remain before it, but when you step away, the reflection disappears, though you yourself remain. Death is simply stepping away from the mirror of flesh. The reflection is gone, but the essence continues untouched. This is why she returned with an urgent message. Do not fear death, and do not waste your life fearing the inevitable, because nothing can destroy the life God has breathed into you. She said that in the realm she entered, everything pulsed with a clarity of truth. What we cling to on earth, possessions, titles, struggles, grudges, appeared weightless, meaningless, like dust in the wind. None of it could cross the doorway with her. What endured, what mattered, was only love, only faith, only the light of Christ dwelling within. That light was the true treasure. She understood that many live their days guarding what cannot last, while neglecting what never dies. In that realm, she saw that love was not merely an emotion, but the very fabric of reality. Love was the atmosphere, the vibration, the current flowing through all things. To dwell in love was to dwell in God Himself. Her encounter showed that death does not rob us of life, but it reveals what life truly is. Imagine awakening from a dream while dreaming. Everything feels so real. The fears, the conflicts, the desires seem so urgent. but when you wake, you realize that what seemed heavy was nothing but shadows. This is what death revealed to her, that earthly life is but a shadow of the true, a dream pointing toward awakening. And yet, she said, this does not mean we should dismiss this life as meaningless. No, this life is the training ground, the stage where we learn to love, to forgive, to embody Christ. How we live here shapes the clarity with which we awaken there. She came back with an urgency because she realized how many lie asleep, chained by fear, paralyzed by the illusion of death. She saw that fear of death is the root of all bondage. It causes us to cling, to fight, to hate, compete, to despair. But if you know that death cannot end you, if you understand that life is eternal and Christ is within you, then fear loses its grip. You live free, you forgive quickly, you love deeply, you take risks in faith because you know you cannot lose. This is the message she carried back. Do not live as though death is the end. Live as though eternity is already in motion, because it is. Death, she said, is like the setting sun. To those who watch it dip below the horizon, it seems as though it has vanished, but for those in another part of the world, the same sun is rising. Life does not end, it shifts perspective. What we call loss is gain in another dimension. This is why Scripture whispers, O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? The sting of death is ignorance, not the act itself. And the victory over death is the revelation of Christ within, who declares, because I live, you also will live. The urgency of her message is this: you need not wait until death to know this truth. You need not cross over to see Jesus face to face. He is already here. The eternal doorway is not in the grave, but in the awakening of consciousness. The veil can be lifted while you yet breathe, if you dare to believe, if you dare to see beyond appearances. She came back to tell us that heaven is not only a place you enter after death. It is a state of awareness you can awaken to now. So why wait until your final breath to realize what she saw? Why lie shackled to fear when freedom is already given? She testified that when she saw Jesus, his words were not so much spoken as they were felt, and the message was clear: live awake. Live in love. Live as though you already know the end of the story, for the end is life, not death. She understood that every moment we breathe is a chance to embody this truth. Every trial we face is not to crush us, but to awaken us. Every loss is not to destroy us, but to remind us that we are not of this world. Her death was a doorway, but her return was a trumpet blast. She came back burning with urgency, pleading with us not to waste our time in fear, not to trade eternal treasures for fleeting illusions. She came back to tell us that the same Jesus she met in eternity walks with us here and now. The doorway is not at the end of life, it is at the edge of your awareness. Cross it now, and you will discover what she discovered, that death is not an end, but a beginning, and life is eternal in him. The divine presence is closer than you think. There is a mystery hidden in plain sight, a truth so near that most overlook it while searching everywhere else. The divine presence is not distant, not locked away in heaven far beyond the clouds, but nearer than your breath, nearer than your thoughts, closer than the beating of your heart. The woman who died and met Jesus testified that when she stood before him, she realized with unspeakable awe that he had never been far away. She was not encountering a stranger who descended from realms unreachable, but the one who had walked with her all her life, unseen yet ever present. His presence was not something she had to strive for or summon, it was the foundation of her very being. She realized that separation had always been the greatest illusion, for how could the Creator abandon his creation? How could the breath of life be apart from the one who breathes? She said that in his presence there was no distance, no barrier, no waiting, no delay, only the recognition that the one she longed for had always been with her, silently guiding, patiently waiting for her eyes to open. This is the urgent message she carried back. You need not search the ends of the earth to find him, for he is already here, and if you would only awaken to this truth, your entire life would transform. Think of how we live striving, reaching, praying as though God is some far off being we must persuade to draw near. We cry, Lord, come to me, show yourself to me, walk with me, and not realizing that the very act of longing reveals his nearness. The hunger for him is proof of his presence, for how could you desire what you have never touched? She said that when she looked into his eyes, she knew she had known them before. Every moment of comfort, every whisper in the night, every sudden peace in storms, every unexplainable strength in weakness, all had been him. We imagine he is apart from us because we are trained to measure with physical senses, but the truth is that the kingdom is within, and the presence dwells in the temple not made by hands, which is the heart of man. She described the overwhelming awareness that in him she lived, moved, and had her being, and that this was not poetic language but reality itself. We are not separate beings trying to reach out to God somewhere in the distance. We are expressions of his life, sparks of his eternal flame. To see Jesus face to face was to awaken to truth that he had always been the essence of her life, the center of her being, the hidden companion who never left her. The tragedy, she realized, is that many go through life blind to this closeness, living as orphans when they are children of the King. That blindness creates fear, loneliness, and despair. Yet the moment your eyes are opened, the moment you dare to believe that he is already within, the chains fall, the loneliness dissolves, the fear loses its grip, and life becomes radiant with hope. She came back with urgency because she saw how much time is wasted waiting for a God who has already arrived. We wait for a sign, for a miracle, for an answer, all the while carrying within us the very source of all signs, all miracles, all answers. She understood that heaven is not waiting to descend. It is pressing against our awareness, longing to break forth in our lives. Divine presence is not closer tomorrow than today, not nearer after prayer than before, not more available to saints than to seekers. He is here now, in this moment, waiting only for recognition. Recognition is the key, for what you fail to recognize you cannot use. A treasure buried beneath your feet means nothing if you do not know it is there, but the moment you uncover it, its wealth becomes your freedom. In the same way, the presence is already within you, but until you see it, you live as though you are empty, when in truth you are full. She said that when she stood in the radiance of his love, she realized she had always carried it, but her eyes had been veiled by doubt, fear, and distraction. Imagine walking with a friend every day, but keeping your head turned away, never once looking at their face. The friend is no less with you, but your failure to acknowledge their nearness makes you feel alone. This is how many live with God, always with him, but rarely aware. She pleaded that we must awaken, not tomorrow, but today, not after death, but now. For to live without recognition of his closeness is to live blind to the greatest truth, that we are never abandoned, never forsaken, never apart. This realization changes everything. If God is near, then fear loses its voice. If Jesus is closer than breath, then loneliness is a lie. If the divine presence is within, then every moment is holy ground. You do not need to climb mountains to find him. You only need to turn inward. You do not need to wait for death to encounter him. You only need to awaken. This is what she came back to say. Stop searching outside for what is already inside. Stop begging for what has already been given. Stop believing the lie of separation. The presence is not coming, the presence is here. Think of it this way. The fish does not search for the ocean, for it already swims in it. The bird does not seek the air, for it already soars within it. And you do not need to seek the presence, for you already live in him and he in you. The awareness of this truth is what transforms. She said that the moment she recognized this reality in eternity, everything made sense, every trial, every tear, every unanswered prayer. It was never that he was absent, it was that she had been blind. He had carried her through, even when she thought she walked alone. He had answered prayers in ways unseen, even when she thought heaven was silent. He had been closer than the very thoughts in her mind, speaking in whispers, guiding in ways too subtle for unawakened eyes. And so her urgent message was this: do not wait for tragedy, do not wait for death, do not wait for eternity to see what is already true. Open your eyes now while you breathe. See him in the ordinary, in the stillness, in the quiet. See him in the trials, in the moments of despair, in the small victories of daily life. See him in the face of the stranger, in the kindness of a friend, in whisper of your own heart. Recognize him, for he is there, closer than you think. This recognition is not a future promise, but a present reality, and the moment you embrace it, your world will shift. Fear will bow, love will rise, peace will overflow. The woman who crossed over discovered this truth in the brilliance of eternity, but she returned because the message was not for her alone. It is for you. It is for every soul still blinded by the illusion of distance. She did not come back to tell of some faraway heaven only, but to tell you that heaven's King already dwells within. You do not need to die to meet him, you need only awaken. The divine presence is closer than you think, and the moment you realize it, your life will never be the same. The urgency of awakening, there is a sound in eternity that few on earth hear until their eyes are opened, and it is not the sound of delay, but of urgency, not tomorrow, but now, not someday, but this day. The woman who died, met Jesus, and was sent back, carried this sound within her spirit, a trumpet call that burns with the fire of heaven. Awaken. She said that in his presence, time itself seemed to vanish, and yet what she felt most strongly was the pressing reality of now, not later, not after you are ready, not after life smooths itself out, but now, for life is too precious and too brief to slumber another day. She realized that countless souls waste their time waiting, postponing, delaying the very thing they were sent here to do, believing they will find God after they've lived enough, after they've suffered enough, after death opens the veil. But the urgent message she carried back is that awakening must happen while breath still fills the lungs, because awakening is not an event reserved for eternity, but the very purpose of existence here and now. To wait is to lose, and to delay is to miss the miracle of God already present. She testified that in the presence of Jesus every excuse crumbled. There was no "I'll do it tomorrow," no "I'll change when I'm ready," no "I'll repent when I'm older." There was only truth, radiant and undeniable, and the truth declared, "Now is the acceptable time, today is the day of salvation, this moment is the door to eternity." She saw how men and women walk through life asleep, distracted by the fleeting noise of this world, running after shadows, trading eternal treasures for temporary illusions, and she wept, for she knew that this blindness is what robs them of heaven on earth. She said that the greatest tragedy is not death itself, but to live without ever truly living, to walk in darkness while the light has always been within. The urgency of awakening is not about fear of punishment, but about the loss of glory, the loss of joy, the loss of experiencing the fullness of God's nearness in this life. To awaken is to open your eyes and see that you are more than flesh, more than circumstance, more than the sum of your struggles. To awaken is to realize that Christ lives in you and desires to shine through you now, not only after you cross into eternity. She pleaded that this realization must grip you, for every moment spent asleep is a moment lost to fear, lost to sin, lost to regret. But every moment spent awake is eternal life breaking into time. The urgency is not born of panic but of love. She said that when she looked into his eyes, there was no condemnation, no harsh judgment, but an intensity of love that pierced her soul and revealed how deeply he longed for his children to awaken. He was not demanding out of wrath, but calling out of love, like a father who sees his child playing in danger and cries out, "Wake up, come out, see where you are." The love in his presence was overwhelming, but it was also unyielding, refusing to let her or anyone else remain blind any longer. She understood then that delay is not neutral. To delay awakening is to align with death, fear, and deception. To awaken is to align with life, freedom, and truth. Her return to this world was not for storytelling, but for warning. The time is short, the days are fleeting, and your awakening cannot wait. She spoke of how many imagine they will awaken in some dramatic moment, in a great revival, in a crisis, in the future. But she said awakening begins in simple now, in choosing to believe, in opening your eyes, in turning within and recognizing his presence. It is not complicated, it is not distant, it is not reserved for the holy few. It is for all who dare to wake from the dream. She compared it to someone sleeping in a room filled with light. The light is there, but as long as you sleep, you do not see it. The moment you open your eyes, what was always present becomes your reality. So it is with awakening. God is already here, Christ already dwells within, heaven already surrounds you, but unless you awaken, you live as though you are in darkness. She came back because the slumber of humanity is deep. We are lulled to sleep by distractions, by money, by ambition, by pain, by entertainment, by fear. We are hypnotized into believing that life is only what we see, touch, and measure. But she testified that the spiritual world is the true world, and that what we call reality is but a shadow compared to it. To live chasing shadows is to waste the gift of life, but to awaken is to see that the kingdom of God is not afar. off-promise but a present reality. And this awakening, she said, carries with it urgency, because every delay costs you life, costs you peace, costs you love. Think of a man who sleeps through the sunrise. The light still comes, but he misses the beauty of its first rays. So too the light of Christ shines, but if you remain asleep, you miss the fullness of what he longs to show you. She said that the enemy of your soul does not need to destroy you outright. He only needs to keep you asleep, distracted, and waiting. If he can convince you that tomorrow is enough, that someday will be the day, he has already won. The urgency of awakening is the antidote to this deception. It calls you to live awake now, to see now, to rise now, to realize that the Spirit of God is moving now, not after your life is perfect, not after you have no struggles, but now in the midst of your imperfection, in the midst of your struggles, in the midst of your ordinary days. She discovered that heaven breaks into earth through awakened souls who dare to live aware of God in every breath. That is the true miracle, not waiting for the end, but realizing that the end is already written and the victory of Christ is already yours. Her words were not soft suggestions, but blazing fire. Awaken, 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 for there is no time to waste in slumber. She saw eternity and understood that every moment on earth is seed, and what you plant in sleep produces little, but what you plant awake bears eternal fruit. She said that in heaven the weight of your choices is revealed, not to condemn, but to show you that every thought, every word, every action carries eternal ripples. How can we afford to sleep when such glory is within our grasp? How can we wait when eternity is already pressing in? She came back not with a gentle whisper, but with a trumpet call. The kingdom of God is within. You open your eyes, awaken and live. The urgency is clear. If you do not awaken now, you will waste the gift of life. If you do not awaken now, you will miss the nearness of Christ, who is already here. If you do not awaken now, you will carry the illusion of separation all your days. But if you do awaken, even in this moment, your world will shift, your heart will burn with love, your eyes will see with clarity, and your life will become a message of hope to others. She saw this truth in eternity and came back to remind you. There is no more time for waiting, no more time for delay. Divine presence is here, the light is shining, the invitation is open. Do not sleep another moment. The time to awaken is now. Love is the eternal language. When the woman died, crossed the veil, and entered that radiant realm where Jesus stood before her, she discovered something beyond all words, beyond every theology, beyond the limits of earthly speech. Love. Not love as the world defines it, conditional, fragile, selfish, fleeting, but love as the very essence of reality, the fabric of existence, the heartbeat of eternity. She said that in his presence she did not merely feel love. She became love, swallowed up in it, immersed in an ocean without end. It was not an emotion that rose and fell. It was the atmosphere of heaven itself. It was the language that needed no translation, the current that flowed through everything and everyone. She realized with shock that every other language would fade, every earthly tongue would cease, every prophecy would come to an end, but love alone would endure forever. And it was then she understood the urgency of her return, for the world has grown deaf to this eternal language. We speak in anger, in fear, in division, in self-interest, and we wonder why the world is broken. But heaven speaks only one language, and it is love, and until we learn it, we remain strangers to the kingdom already within us. She described how in that realm of glory there was no striving to communicate, no need to defend, no fear of being misunderstood. Love was the communication. Every glance, every thought, every presence was understood perfectly because all flowed in the same current of divine love. She looked at Jesus, and his eyes told her everything, not in words but in knowing. She said his gaze revealed her past, her present, her struggles, her pain, her hopes, her sins, and yet in that knowing there was no shame, no condemnation, only love so pure it burned away every shadow. She understood then that love is the true language of God, and it is the only language that will last. All else are titles, our reputations, our possessions, our arguments, our debates are noise compared to the eternal clarity of love. She returned to say with urgency, learn this language now, live it now, speak it now, for it is the only voice heaven recognizes. Think of how we live on earth. We speak words with our mouths, but so often our hearts speak another language, bitterness, pride, selfishness, fear. We declare love but withhold forgiveness. We say we believe but live in suspicion. We offer kindness but expect return. Yet in the realm she touched there was no pretense. Love was not given because it was earned. Love was the very nature of existence. It flowed freely, endlessly, without condition. She said it was like standing in the sun. The light and warmth did not ask whether she deserved it. It simply shone, because that is what light does. So it is with the love of God. He does not measure it, ration it, or reserve it for a few. He pours it endlessly, because he is love itself. The tragedy, she realized, is not that love is withheld, but that so few open themselves to receive it. She came back because she saw how many lie deaf to this eternal language. We chase after power, money, recognition, and comfort, but we neglect the one thing that endures beyond the grave. She said that when she crossed over, none of what she had acquired mattered. Her achievements, her possessions, her worries all faded into nothingness. Only love remained, only how she had given it, received it, lived it. She realized that what we call success here means little there, but what we call love here means everything there. The urgent message she carried back was this: do not waste your life speaking the wrong language. Do not fill your days with words of fear, anger, and division, for those words will vanish. Speak the eternal language of love, for it is the only one that carries into eternity. She said that love in heaven was not sentimental but transformative. It was not soft weakness but blazing power. It consumed lies, dissolved pride, healed wounds, and revealed truth. It was impossible to hide in its presence, for love saw everything and healed everything at once. She realized then that love is not a part of God, but the whole of his nature revealed. When Jesus stood before her, radiating love, it was not a feeling, it was who he is. And in his presence she saw herself not as a sinner groveling before a distant judge, but as a daughter embraced by her Father. That love revealed her worth, her identity, her calling, and it stripped away every false label she had carried. She said the message of heaven is not, do better, but receive love, for in receiving you will be transformed. And once transformed, you will live and speak that language in the world. She pleaded that we must understand this now, for the world is starving not for more information, but for more love. People are not dying from lack of knowledge, but from lack of compassion. Families are breaking not because of ignorance, but because of the absence of forgiveness. Nations war not because of poverty, but because of hatred and pride. The answer is not more of man's noise, but the eternal language of love, for love alone heals, love alone restores, love alone binds what hath been torn, and the love of God is not fragile. It is strong enough to lift the broken, mighty enough to forgive the guilty, deep enough to embrace the outcast, and eternal enough to outlast every shadow of death. She returned to tell us that we must begin to speak this language with our lives, not with empty words, but with actions that flow from the reality of Christ within us. Love the ones who wrong you, forgive the ones who wound you, serve the ones who cannot repay you, give to the ones who have nothing to offer in return. See Christ in every face, even in those who reject you. This is the eternal language, and when you live it, heaven touches earth through you. She said that in heaven, love was so natural that it was impossible to resist, and if we would live from that reality here, the world itself would begin to change. But it begins with awakening, with realizing that you already carry this love within because Christ is in you. She warned that many will spend their whole lives seeking gifts, signs, wonders, and yet neglect the greatest of all, love. Prophecy will pass, tongues will cease, knowledge will fade, but love never fails. To spend a lifetime seeking what fades is to waste the gift of existence, but to live in love is to invest in eternity. She said that when she looked back on her life from the other side, the only things that glowed with eternal significance were the moments she loved, the times she forgave when it was hardest, the times she gave when she had little, the times she embraced when others rejected. Those moments shone brighter than any achievement, because they were spoken in heaven's language. And so her urgent message is this: do not delay in learning and living the eternal language. You do not need to wait until death. Discover it. Love is here now within you, waiting to be released. Every word you speak, every thought you hold, every act you perform can either echo with love or with fear. Choose love, for it alone endures. Let your life be a translation of heaven's language on earth, for when you stand before him, it will not be your wealth, your power, or your reputation that speaks. It will be the love you gave, the love you carried, the love you embodied, for that is the eternal language, and it is the only one heaven hears. Your life is the message when the woman returned from her encounter beyond the veil, after standing in the radiant presence of Jesus and being immersed in truth too profound for earthly tongues. She realized something that shook her to her core. She was not only sent back with a message, she herself was the message. Every breath she took, every step she walked, every word she spoke was to become a living testimony of what she had seen and heard. She understood then that it is not enough for a man or woman to simply repeat words about God, for words can be dismissed, doubted, or forgotten. But a life that is lived in truth, a life that reflects heaven's light, becomes a message that cannot be silenced. She said that when she returned to her body, she carried not only memories but a fire, a charge, a call to live in such a way that anyone who saw her would glimpse the love of Christ, the nearness of his presence, and the reality of eternity. And this is the same charge for each of us. Your life is not a random existence drifting through time. Your life is the message God is writing to the world. She testified that in the presence of Jesus, she saw her life not as scattered pieces of events and choices, but as a single unfolding story. Every moment mattered, every decision carried weight, every act of kindness, every whisper of forgiveness, every step of faith was part of a message that heaven itself was reading. She realized that we often think only of great deeds as significant, but in eternity it was the smallest acts of love that glowed the brightest. The cup of water given in his name, the smile offered to the broken, the prayer whispered for a stranger, these were eternal sentences written in the language of heaven. She saw that life is not about collecting achievements for ourselves, but about revealing Christ through everything we are. We are the message, and the question is, what message are we living? Do we embody fear or faith, bitterness or forgiveness, selfishness or love? For our lives speak louder than our words, and whether we realize it or not, we are declaring something to the world every day. The urgency of her return was not just to say that death is a doorway, not just to remind us that God is near, not just to proclaim that awakening cannot be delayed, and not just to reveal that love is eternal. It was also to tell us that we are responsible for what our lives communicate. She saw that many live as though their lives are meaningless, drifting, waiting for something grand to happen, but heaven revealed that every life is a message from God, handwritten and unique, meant to shine light into darkness. Some live as if their story is one of defeat, speaking only of pain and failure. Some live as if their message is anger, resentment, or despair, but those who awaken realize that their lives are meant to declare hope, faith, love, and the indwelling Christ. She returned to shake us awake with this truth. You are the message, and the world is reading. She said that when she stood before Jesus, his love stripped away every excuse. She could not say, I was too small, for he showed her how even the smallest seed bears eternal fruit. She could not say, I was too broken, for he showed her that his strength is made perfect in weakness. She could not say, I had nothing to give, for he showed her that her very being, her words, her time, her prayers, her presence were treasures of eternal worth. She realized then that to live on earth is not simply to survive, but to carry a message of heaven into the world of men, and the question became unavoidable. What message am I living? What message are you living? For silence itself is a message, and every choice speaks. This is why she came back with fire in her voice. She pleaded with us not to waste our days on trivial pursuits, not to drown our lives in fear, bitterness, or selfish ambition, but to live awake, live in love, live as Christ within us is longing to reveal. For your life is the sermon you are preaching, whether you speak or not. You may never stand on a stage, never write a book, never command a crowd, but your life, the way you forgive, the way you serve, the way you endure trials, the way you love, is preaching every day. Someone is reading you, someone is watching, someone is listening, and what you reveal of God may be the only Bible they ever encounter. She saw that heaven does not measure greatness by titles, wealth, or power, but by the message of love and truth lived out in the smallest details of life. She spoke of how in that realm she saw clearly that every life is a letter, written not with ink but with spirit, not on paper but on hearts. Some letters are never opened because the one who carries them hides in fear or shame. Some letters are stained with bitterness, and the message becomes distorted. But those who awaken realize that Christ himself is the author, and their task is not to write the message themselves, but to let him write it through them. She said the greatest transformation comes not from striving to be perfect, but from surrendering to the one who already dwells within. The moment you stop trying to control the message and instead yield to him, your life begins to shine with authenticity, clarity, and power. And so her urgent message is this: live with awareness that your life is speaking. Do not waste it echoing fear. Do not waste it magnifying despair. Let your life proclaim hope. Let your life radiate love. Let your life testify of Christ's presence. This is not a call for perfection, but for authenticity. For when you live awake to God's nearness, every ordinary act becomes extraordinary. The way you greet a stranger, the way you endure hardship, the way you forgive offenses, these become messages louder than sermons. Your life is meant to be a mirror reflecting heaven, and when others see you, they should catch glimpses of Jesus, just as she did when she stood in his presence. She returned. Remind us that eternity does not ask what we said we believed, it asks what we lived. Belief without embodiment is a hollow message, but belief expressed in action becomes a letter from God to the world. She said that many will discover too late that their lives spoke messages they never intended, messages of fear, pride, bitterness, or despair. But for those who awaken now, for those who embrace love now, for those who live as though heaven is already here, their lives will shine with a message that echoes into eternity. She saw that when we stand before Jesus, he will not ask for our words, for he already knows them. He will reveal the message of our lives, written in the choices we made, the love we gave, the truth we lived. And so the call is clear: awaken and live the message. Let your life be more than survival, more than noise, more than fear. Let it be a declaration of Christ in you, the hope of glory, for you are the message, and the world is reading. And when your days are over and you step through the doorway she once crossed, may your life shine with the eternal language of love, the urgency of awakening, the truth of God's nearness, and the reality that death is not the end but the beginning. This is why she came back to remind us that our lives are not accidents but assignments, not whispers lost in time but messages written for eternity. And the greatest truth of all is this: you are the message God is sending, and the time to live it is now.